There is a particular kind of silence that surrounds the children of famous men. It is not emptiness. It is restraint. It is the discipline of people who watched their father be consumed by a world that loved his voice, but never really knew the person behind it. For over a decade, the family of Robin Gibb, one of the founding pillars of the Bee Gees, one of the most distinctive voices in the history of popular music, maintained that silence with quiet dignity. They attended tributes. They gave brief statements. They did not explain. They did not expose. But silence, like everything else, eventually reaches a limit. 13 years after Robin Gibb drew his last breath on May 20th, 2012, the people who knew him best are finally speaking. Not to destroy a legacy, not to chase headlines, but to give the world a complete picture of a man who was magnificent and flawed in equal measure. And in doing so, his children have confirmed rumors that swirled for decades about his marriages, his secrets, his rivalries, and the battles he fought far from any stage. Robin Gibb was born on December 22, 1949, in the Jane Crookall maternity home on the Isle of Man, arriving just 35 minutes before his fraternal twin Maurice. Their parents, Hugh and Barbara Gibb, were warm and musical, but the family was restless. They moved from the Isle of Man to Manchester and then, in 1958, made the bold decision to emigrate entirely, boarding a ship bound for Redcliffe, Queensland, Australia. The Gibb boys, Barry the eldest, then Robin and Maurice, were not quiet passengers. They were, by most accounts, a controlled form of chaos. Mischievous, creative, unpredictable. Adults worried about them. Neighbors tired of them. But beneath the noise was something extraordinary building quietly. In Australia, the brothers found structure and sound. They began harmonizing together, naturally and instinctively, attempting to match the close-knit vocal style of acts like the Everly Brothers. By 1955, they had formed a group called the Rattlesnakes, performing in local halls. After lineup changes and in natural evolution, they eventually became the Bee Gees, short for Brothers Gibb. By 1960, still only 10 years old, the brothers performed on Australian television for the first time. Robin's voice even then carried something unusual, a trembling, delicate vibrato that sounded older than his body, more emotional than his years should have allowed. It was the kind of voice people remembered after the television was switched off. By the mid-1960s, Festival Records signed them. When Robin sang lead on early recordings, something unmistakable announced itself. This was not just a talented child. This was an instrument that would one day move millions. The family returned to England in 1967 at the invitation of manager Robert Stigwood, and within months the Bee Gees had broken into both the British and American charts. Songs like New York Mining Disaster 1941 and Massachusetts announced them as a serious creative force. And Robin, with his trembling high notes and emotional rawness, was central to that identity. But fame moved fast, and it did not wait for anyone to get emotionally ready. In 1968, at only 18 years old, Robin married Molly Hullis, a secretary working for Robert Stigwood's management office. Their bond was forged, in part, through shared trauma. The couple were together during the Hither Green rail crash of November 1967, a catastrophic derailment that killed 49 people and injured over 70 more. Surviving something like that creates a powerful emotional bond, the kind that feels permanent in the moment. For a few years, it seemed like Robin had built something solid. He had fame, a devoted wife, and eventually 2 children, Spencer, born in 1972, and Melissa, born in 1974. But the Bee Gees were becoming one of the biggest acts on the planet, and the demands of that success were merciless. Robin spent increasing stretches of time in the United States, while Molly and the children remained in England. The distance was physical at first, then emotional, then permanent. Friends who knew him during this period later described a man under enormous pressure. He was using amphetamines and methadone, stimulants that were widely used among musicians trying to sustain energy through endless touring and recording schedules. The drugs altered his moods unpredictably. His behavior became erratic. His paranoia deepened. He grew convinced that those around him, including Molly's legal team, were conspiring against him. By 1980, after years of separation in every sense of the word, Molly filed for divorce. The breakup turned bitter and very public. In 1983, Robin was jailed for 14 days after violating a court order by publicly discussing the details of their marriage. It was one of the most humiliating public moments of his life. He later told The Telegraph that the estrangement from his children that followed the divorce felt like bereavement. "I felt as though I was on the verge of madness," he admitted. Eventually, he rebuilt his relationship with Spencer and Melissa when they were in their early teens. But the wounds from those years never fully healed. In 1985, Robin married for the second time. His new wife was Dwina Murphy, an Irish artist, writer, and self-described Druid priestess with a deep interest in mythology, history, and ancient spirituality. The two had met in 1980, introduced through her cousin, and shared an unusual range of passions, including old buildings, Irish history, and a mutual disregard for conventional expectations. They had one son together, Robin John, known to the family simply as RJ, born in 1983. To the outside world, Robin and Dwina appeared to be a peacefully eccentric couple, dividing their time between Miami, the Isle of Man, and their remarkable medieval Oxfordshire property, the Prebendal. What the outside world did not know was that their marriage operated under an arrangement almost nobody suspected. Their marriage was open. After Robin's death, Dwina confirmed this publicly for the first time. Speaking to the Daily Mail, she was measured and direct. "I've never been a jealous person," she said. "My attitude has always been live and let live. Creative and artistic people live in a different way, maybe. There's a certain kind of freedom I suppose we have. We always had that in our marriage, but we knew we both deeply loved each other." She added, "The strength of our relationship was that we were dedicated to each other, and no matter what happened in our lives, we knew we'd always be together." Those words gave context to the most sensational story that had followed Robin for years. Around 2001, when Robin was nearing 50, he began a long relationship with Claire Young, a housekeeper who worked for the family at their homes in both Oxfordshire and Miami. The relationship lasted years, and in 2008 Claire gave birth to Robin's fourth child, a daughter named Snow Evelyn Robin Juliet Gibb. The tabloids erupted. The headlines framed it as betrayal. But Dwina's revelation changed the shape of the story entirely. The arrangement, she insisted, was one she had understood. Snow and Claire had been provided for. Robin had transferred an £850,000 home in Buckinghamshire into Claire's name in the final weeks of his life, and his estate included provisions for Snow. The will itself told its own story. Robin's estate, valued at approximately £26 million, was placed in a trust, with income directed to Dwina, and the principal to be divided eventually between Spencer, Melissa, and RJ upon Dwina's death. Snow, though not a primary named beneficiary in the original document, was specifically referenced in the final paragraph, where Robin stated he was in the process of making reasonable financial provision for her. The family later confirmed that this provision was carried out privately, deliberately kept away from legal conflict or public spectacle. One of the truths Robin's children have confirmed most carefully is the one that was perhaps the most painful for fans to absorb, that the brothers who created such seamless harmony together spent much of their lives navigating tension that never fully resolved. The rivalry between Robin and Barry began not in malice, but in the natural collision of two enormous creative personalities. When Massachusetts became a global hit in 1967 and Robin sang lead, he felt seen. But as Barry's songwriting dominance grew through the late 1960s, Robin increasingly felt pushed to the margins of his own group. The frustration became a breaking point in 1969, when the recording of the album Odessa turned contentious and Robin temporarily left the band to pursue a solo career. He returned in 1970, but the unspoken tensions were simply absorbed back into the surface, never truly addressed. The death of Maurice Gibb in January 2003 devastated the family in ways that extended far beyond grief. Maurice had always been the emotional center of the group, the peacemaker, the brother who could ease tension between Barry and Robin with warmth and humor. Without him, that buffer was gone. Barry became embroiled in a very public dispute over a tribute album he felt was being arranged for profit rather than honor. Robin, caught between loyalty to his twin's memory and the need to keep moving forward, found himself navigating an impossible position. By the mid-2000s, the two remaining brothers were barely speaking. Then came the most painful revelation of all. When Robin was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2011, he did not tell Barry. Barry later confirmed in interviews that he only learned of the illness when Robin was already dying. The silence between them had grown so thick that Robin carried a terminal diagnosis to near the end without reaching for the phone. Barry described learning the truth as something that devastated him beyond words. For Robin, that silence was not indifference. His children have since explained that it reflected years of accumulated emotional distance, wounds that both men were too proud, too guarded, and perhaps too frightened to fully acknowledge. They loved each other. That, too, has been confirmed. But love and closeness are not always the same thing. By 2011, Robin Gibb was fighting on two fronts, against his cancer and against his own determination to keep creating. He had been diagnosed with colon cancer that had spread to his liver. The treatment was brutal. Surgeries, chemotherapy, a body that was slowly losing a war. And yet Robin refused to stop working, even attached to hospital equipment. He continued composing with his son RJ, a symphonic piece called the Titanic Requiem, written to mark the 100th anniversary of the great ship sinking. For Robin, the project was more than commemorative. It was personal, a meditation on endurance, on tragedy, and on the question of what a person clings to when everything around them is going under. By April 2012, he contracted pneumonia and fell into a coma. Doctors quietly advised the family to prepare for the end. Dwina, RJ, and those closest to him gathered at his bedside at intensive care in London's Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. And then something happened that neither doctors nor family members have been able to fully explain. As Dwina played music from the Titanic Requiem in the room, the very piece Robin had fought to complete during his illness, his fingers began to move. Then his eyes opened. He looked at his family. He smiled. Doctors described it as a medical anomaly. RJ described it simply as a miracle. For several days, Robin was present again, speaking softly, humming melodies, telling his family he still wanted to return to the stage. Even at the edge of death, his thoughts were on music, on performance, on the next song. The recovery could not last. His kidneys failed. His liver gave out. The cancer had taken too much. On May 20th, 2012, Robin Hugh Gibb died at the age of 62. Dwina later described those final moments as quiet and peaceful. He was smiling, she said. His hand was in hers. He was unafraid. RJ, who had grown up attending studio sessions with his father, accompanying him through late nights of writing and recording, held his father and whispered words of love as Robin took his last breaths. In the years since, RJ Gibb has spoken openly and with increasing emotional depth about the man he grew up alongside. He has described learning about creativity not through instruction, but through proximity, watching his father compose in bathtubs, scribble lyrics on airline tickets, disappear into music when the world outside became too complicated to manage. RJ confirmed to Smooth Radio that Robin told him the song, "I Started a Joke," was composed on a flight, the melody found in the drone of the plane's engines. He took the ticket and started penning down